Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source Podcast. I'm your host, Jace. Bad Idea has taken us over once again. That's right. It's Sunday, so that damn computer, that damn button, whatever it is, I don't know if it's Eniac's influence or what, but Bad Idea has taken us over once again. So apologize for any technical difficulties or sound issues that we have. Hopefully, whatever's going on with my equipment that allows Bad Idea to take it over every Sunday doesn't leak over and infect my buddy Rocky from the Comic Boom channel. Hopefully all your equipment is staying pristine there, Rock.
Well, you don't have to worry about me. The only thing that's influenced me right now is that I have had a couple of, afternoon beers this afternoon, enjoying the early spring weather here in southern Alberta, Canada. But I'm Eniac free, at least for the time being.
That's good. Maybe Eniac, not even Eniac dares to invade Canada. Y'all are just too nice up there. So
yeah, we're harmless. We're too friendly. There's no, it's all good.
All good. So yeah, we're going to talk a little Eniac too. We're going to get spoilery, everybody. You've had over a week to read it now. Because last week, rather than reviewing Eniac 2, we let that crazy Robert Venditti on the show. I hope you all got to check that out. Rob had a lot to say about Takers and how much fun he's having doing it and how different it is from anything he's done before. Plus, there was talk of the button and my overnight camp out adventure in front of my local comic shop, homeless included. It was an adventure. It really was. I was so tired the next day. But totally worth it. And somehow I ended up with 2 buttons again. I really can't believe that happened. But yeah, homeless guy came up. Can I use your phone, bro? I'm sorry. I don't have a phone. It's broken. Please go away from me, smelly homeless man. But anyway, to the matter at hand, Eniac number 2. Why don't you give your initial thoughts on the issue, Rocky, while I scroll on down to the creator page and let everybody know who worked on this bad boy.
This obviously, it continues the rather interesting sort of almost like it's a computer / Cold War adventure where Eniac is a computer that was developed in near the end of World War II, and the first issue established that only one nuclear bomb was supposed to be dropped on Japan and on Hiroshima, but not on Nagasaki. Eniac was responsible for dropping the second nuclear bomb, and the U.S. lost control of Eniac essentially, and then basically lost Eniac. And Eniac slowly is a computer virus, a computer program which slowly developed and is essentially been sort of working behind in the shadows for decades leading up to present day. And Eniac is a national security threat for every country on the planet, basically. And, the first issue introduced us to 2 women, 2 super spies working for the United States government, Olivia Fletcher and Allison Falk. That's Falk, Allison Falk. And their job, they were given their orders, and they were given their orders when they were stark naked, because they have to go full analog, because they can't have any computer equipment on them or anything like that. They have to be electronic free, because Eniac can find you wherever you are at, and they need to take out Eniac, because Eniac is a genuine threat, or at least I'm assuming that he's a threat to the entire planet, because he could have just, what is Eniac's game here? What is the computer goal? The Eniac's initial programming was to protect. I guess I'm not even sure what the goal was. It was to protect the planet. And is Eniac a threat to the human race? It's not really clear, but he certainly seems to be a threat to governments. In any event, its last issue ended with these 2 agents, Olivia Fletcher and Allison Falk, being assigned to take out Eniac. And this is where the second issue really, it begins. They were sent into Russian territory to seek out a Russian who a Russian counterpart to the American that created Eniac, to try to get information on Eniac to destroy him. And last issue ended with their plane being destroyed. And that's how this second issue picks up. And I got to tell you, full compliments to the creative team. And this is quite good. And I'll let you introduce the creative team.
Yeah. And I'll just call out, like, what the heck you guys doing over there? The credit, like, I understand you put the credits in the front of the book normally, or you put them right at the end, right when everybody's finished, like on a movie.
Yeah.
The credits are on page 13 here, halfway through. Like, what are you guys doing?
I know.
Dinesh, Warren, what the hell are you doing, man? I got to scroll halfway through to find the credits. Anyway, the writer's Matt Kent. Art is by Doug Braithwaite. Colors are by Diego Rodriguez. Letters by Dave Sharp. Edited by Warren Simons. An awesome cover by Luis Rosa and Diego Rodriguez. Logo and trade dress, Tom Muller. And this was interesting. On my first read through, I won't say that I was disappointed, but the story didn't feel as dynamic as the first one. Just as much action. This is definitely an action-packed issue. It's full throttle. It's all action, I feel like. There's a couple of character moments here or there, but for some reason it just didn't have the impact. I don't know, maybe because it's a second issue and the first one was the first Bad Idea book, and I've been really anticipating this publisher finally getting books out there, and there was just a lot of hype and excitement for that first book, and I didn't necessarily feel that level of excitement when I read this one.
Yeah, I would agree with you. A lot of this was this does seem almost like by the numbers. The first issue was all set up, and I think that's why it was exciting, because it's an exciting concept. It's a great concept, and the first issue you really, they hit the ground running, and this second issue seems to continue the running which began in the first, and so I think that's why it's not quite doesn't quite have the gravitas, I find, but at the same time, while it's perhaps I would say almost predictable, I'm still excited. I'm still along for the ride. It's sort of like the second act in a movie where we're still building that big third act, but still along for the ride. And again, doesn't quite have the excitement and the building suspense of the first issue, but it's still pretty good. It's still impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like when I read through the second time, the quality is still there. This is still, like you said, this is still a great story. Yeah. It's still, the concept is still interesting. Technically, it's a very well done book. The Doug Braithwaite art is exceptional. The colors by Diego Rodriguez are awesome. It's paced really well. You feel like you get a big chunk of story. So there's nothing I can point to and say, oh, this is worse than issue one. If anything, it's what I'm bringing to it. Expectations that it's not quite up to what I, expected. And that's just on me, because when I read it through the second time, I liked it even more than when I read through it the first time. But here's the interesting thing. And this, this may go to what you were saying, Rocky, about kind of predictable or paint by numbers. It's certainly a story we've seen time and time again, right? Like War Games, the Whopper, or Joshua, as Stephen Falcon, Dr. Stephen Falcon called him, the guy that created it. This idea of a computer that says, hey, I know better than you. They built it to try to, hey, let's feed it in all this information and see if it can figure out how we can end the war, basically end World War II. That's why it was built. And then it sort of took on a life of its own. They decided, hey, well, if it figured this out and it worked, drop a second bomb, first bomb 70% to end the war, second bomb like 99.8% or whatever it was, and it worked, right? So why not feed it more information? And you could see it coming a mile away, like, who thought this was a good idea? But again, we have the perspective of living in a world where technology, we've seen it be misused and go sideways. We've seen it in our science fiction stories, Terminator and whatnot, I, Robot, those kind of stories. So you can look at it that way and say, well, of course, this went sideways on them, of course, right? Like, that hindsight's 2020. And again, it's not the most original idea. But Matt Kent is doing it in such a way that it is exciting. These two super spies are fun to root for, and they're definitely capable, and they're awesome. And the fact that they're females is, I love the fact that it's not like thrown in our face or what have you. It's just who they are. But here's what I found interesting in this particular issue. We learned that Eniac, when the Russians stole it, that's what happened. When the Allies tried to destroy it, turned out the Russians had a spy. They stole it. They took it to Russia, and that's where it sort of got loose. So Eniac established itself somewhere in Russia, caused a nuclear meltdown that the Russians covered up, which is, I guess I should say Soviets, because it was during the Cold War, and it was when it was a Soviet Union. Totally plausible that the Soviet Union would cover up this reactor accident, and at this nuclear power plant way out in nowhere, a small town, they were able to hush it up. Also, a lot of women in that area had been disappearing for years, and come to find out, it was these women that were abused, or in one form or another, abusive relationships, or didn't have any food, or just they were not in good shape. So Eniac was recruiting them, basically, and basically established this kind of beachhead, this headquarters, where he had brainwashed these women. Eniac had brainwashed these women, giving them a place to live, a true socialist kind of utopian headquarters where they could all live and their needs were met, and they're willing to lay down their lives for Eniac in order to preserve their way of life. They don't realize that Eniac, and this is what comes across in this issue, Eniac, more so than any of these stories that we mentioned before, where we've gone down this path before, Eniac seems to me to be malevolent. Most of the time when you tell these stories, it's sort of, there is no emotion. The emotion is removed from the equation, right? It's a 1 + 1 = 2 sort of equation, where the machine has decided, hey, the world would be better off without you emotional humans fucking things up, because you always do. Because you have your wars, and you have your religion, and you have your jealousy and your greed, and all these emotions, and this instability that causes an unstable world that eventually leads to the destruction of the world, not to mention all the environmental damage you do, and all that kind of thing, right? And it's a very scientific way of looking at it, right? It's 1 + 1 = 2. It's just the facts. The world would be a better place if you humans weren't here ruining the environment, having your wars, poisoning the environment with your wars and your pollution and whatever. That's not Eniac. There's a malevolence here. There's a level of Eniac wanting revenge because the Allies decided they were going to destroy it. There's a level of coercion and manipulation and kind of puppet master in recruiting these women to protect it, and what are you going to send an army in there and they're going to attack these Russian women? And and Russian, some of them are very young. That's a very manipulative thing to do,
Yeah, well, he
could have recruited any number of people to protect it, but going women. So, and so there's this level of malevolence or evil, almost emotion that Eniac has that a lot of these stories don't. And I think that's where this differs, and where Matt Kent has hit on something that's sort of interesting, and how that plays out against the two super spies, because now we've learned that the next step, they got to go and try to find one of the super spies' mothers. So, and they're even saying, it looks like Eniac is 4 steps ahead of us and is just pulling our strings. So that's what's interesting about it, the emotional part. And maybe we'll find out it's not, but it's almost like Eniac isn't just a machine. It's got feelings. It's like, I don't know. It's more than just a machine.
Well, yeah, it even seems to have almost a sick sense of humor.
Right.
I mean, it even threatened. It even sent a nuclear bomb that to both the United States and the Russian governments, but they never exploded, or it threatened both of them.
Stopped it at 1 second and said, "Don't ever come back to this town that I've built.
Exactly. I mean, it's clearly manipulative. Now, but having said that, I'm wondering if it's a possibility. Well, in fact, it is a possibility because I agree with you that on the surface, this does appear to be a malevolency. This is a malevolent sort of computer program. On the other hand, if, I keep going back to the first issue where it said that, 2 nuclear bombs, the second bomb would be 100%. That would definitely is what you would want. So it might be malevolent, but it might still have, is it possible? And I'm wondering, is it possible that it could have the end justifying the means? So maybe it's not above killing many in order to save the most, which is terrible. But I'm wondering if maybe it's just really, it's a almost like a benevolent dictator that it's not willing, that it's more than willing to sacrifice many lives in order to maybe create a betterment for the whole. And, I keep thinking that it has an end game here that maybe we're not all seeing. And I'm wondering if Matt Kent has something under his belt that maybe there's some misdirection going on here, because if suddenly it was revealed that Eniac was actually the good guy at the end of this story, that would definitely sort of throw the reader for a loop. And I think that's still a possibility, quite frankly, but I guess we shall see.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it certainly would be a surprise because it doesn't seem that way. But I get your point that, what I could be taking as kind of these negative emotions, this evilness, this malevolence from Eniac is really just thinking that much further ahead than all of us, right? Like, okay, if I want the outcome to be X, I need to do A plus B times C, and this will be the outcome based on all the different variables and possibilities because Eniac is that much smarter than us, and I'm prescribing emotions to something that really is just a formula for him to get what he wants. Is it manipulative? Well, it would be if a person did it because that would involve emotion, but really if you want to prescribe that to Eniac, maybe I'm taking it too far and ascribing human kind of traits to a computer program where I shouldn't. And really, it's just a formula of add all these things up and it's going to equal this. But I don't know. I kind of don't think so, because there always is that sort of human factor, right? Like, how are people going to respond?
Yeah.
And if anything, I think that the end might turn out to be like, how do you defeat Eniac? They're struggling so much. It's all powerful. It's got control of all these satellites. It's hard to even hide from. No matter how remote you are, it tracks you down. We saw in the first issue how the Secretary of Defense had to meet with these 2 super spies, and they were all butt-ass naked out in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere, in order to try to, with an umbrella over, so Eniac couldn't find out what they were talking and look down with a satellite. So maybe the way to defeat Eniac is to act like completely out of character and out of any predictable sort of behavior. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because the Russian that super spies Olivia, Fletcher, and Allison Falk, that they find the Russian Yuri Andronikov, and he ultimately, before he dies at the end of the issue, he provides them. Apparently, he devises a way that he thinks might be able to kill Eniac through literally weaving something with the braids in his, I don't know if it's his hair or through materials from core rope memory. So obviously he's a super genius, much like his American counterpart Ned there, who created Eniac. And it's very interesting that he thinks that somehow that, this, whatever he has, whatever thing he developed through his analog core rope memory system, is that might be able to take out Eniac. It's what I think is kind of curious is Eniac actually arranges the assassination of Ned, his own creator, the person who created Eniac, at one point, the Russians trade 7 spies to the Americans to get this Eniac creator, out of prison in the U.S. to come to the Soviet Union to try to take out Eniac. And Eniac, he's unsuccessful, but ultimately the Russians, he's unsuccessful. The Russians end up letting this Ned go, and he ends up getting a note from Eniac. And the note says, "If child is father to the man, then I must consider you both father and friend. You will be missed, but you will forever be remembered." And then it shows Ned being killed. So Eniac, it would seem, arranged for the killing of his own creator, which would support your theory, Jace, that it's a very malevolent machine. But then his father did try to kill him. Ned did try to end him. And if Eniac has a noble goal, a computer program could be forgiven to arrange the assassination of someone, even if that someone is his creator. So I'm fascinated by this. I think it's making, it's making me question, I still think, I think he is probably malevolent, but I would love a little bit of misdirection here. I'd still like to see, that maybe there's more to this Eniac story than's on the surface.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And being that it's Matt Kent, I do sort of expect some twist at some point. I do like the idea of this analog. He's like, if you can feed this formula, whatever I came up with, and weaved it into these braids. I like that idea. It reminds me of Wanted, not the comic from Mark Miller, but the movie, when they changed stuff around and there was the loom, and based on, the thread went over, under, or whatever. So it's kind of that sort of thing, which I find super fascinating. And yeah, it is a way for them to get around Eniac's ability, obviously, to access anything electronic. So maybe it is too far analog. Maybe that is the answer. Find something that Eniac simply cannot understand, because like I said, it even seems to understand emotion at this point. So to talk a little bit about the art, I mean, Doug Braithwaite's art is absolutely fantastic. One of the things that I love is that he gets a chance to use really large panels throughout the entirety of the story, which gives enough detail for his line work, because you get a big chunk of story here, and in a usual comic, okay, it's got to be limited to 20 pages or what have you. You would have to shrink the panels down in order to get the same amount of story, and then you don't get to see all the detail and the faces and whatnot that we're getting here. So I really appreciate that. Like I said, the color work is spectacular. The visual storytelling is done really, really well. I do wish if I had anything to nitpick, 2 issues in, I wish we did know a little bit more about our 2 super spies. But what we do know is that they are very capable. So,
yeah. And they appear to have a relationship that it seems to be more than just a professional relationship between them as well.
Yeah, possibly.
That was implied in the first issue anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't wait for more of Eniac. And if you're not reading this, if your comic shop's not carrying it, I'm sorry. Is what I'll say. There are plenty of shops that are doing mail order. So I do encourage you. I'm not going to get into the whole it's not available digitally and it's not going to be in trade or anything like that. But I will remind everybody that both the first issue of Eniac and the second issue are available, and they're going to stay in print probably for at least through the rest of this year as a not first print, which you, if you do have a shop that is a bad idea location or you mail order, you should be able to get the not first print for a cover price still, at least for the first month that it's out. So don't pay huge prices for the not first print on online. You should be able to get it for $4 plus shipping. So. But yeah, this one ends with Yuri Andronikov. They leave him there. They take his cloak or whatever you want to call it. And you knew there was some significance to that, because when they go to rescue him, he made sure to throw that on. And I had a feeling, okay, what's that about? So they take it and they've got to go find I'm not even sure which Fletcher.
Yeah,
Fletcher.
it's
Yeah.
Allison. I thought it was Allison Falk's mother, but am I mixed? Maybe I'm mixing up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
no,
she says Fletcher, what's wrong? Find Jules. Yeah.
yeah, Rosa
Jules
Jules, I
Sweden.
think is
Yeah, that's my
Allison's
mother.
mother.
Allison's mother. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they got to go find Allison Falk's mother. So yeah, Eniac appears to be, again, a few steps ahead of them. So, and it very well might be right, Rocky. It may be that Eniac. Okay, I'm Eniac, and I want to ensure that my my final plan, whatever that might be, there's nobody who can stop it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And I know that this Andronikov could possibly stop it. I know this Rosa, Jules Rosa or whatever can stop it, but I don't know where these people are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a countdown that really means nothing, but I'm going to start this countdown so that I can force the hand of the governments of the world to try to stop me, try to stop this countdown. Whatever's going to happen in 3 days, they're going to think I'm going to destroy the world or launch nuclear weapons or whatever it is. They're going to go try to stop me, and they're going to go find everything that's a threat to me to try to use it to stop me. So I can't find these people. I don't know where they have Andronikov. I don't know where Rosa Jules is, or Jules Rosa, or whatever her name is. But if I can manipulate events to where I can force a government to go look for them, then I can just follow their agents and find out where Andronikov is.
Yeah. And what I find actually fascinating is about this is I'm wondering what Eniac's ultimate goal is, because I find it hard to believe that Eniac's goal, I have a hard time believing that his goal is the destruction of the human race. Because if he's malevolent, what's his bad guy plan? And because it's not like I'm going to compare him to the Terminator for a second. You know, Skynet built other machines so that machines could all think collectively, but Eniac isn't creating other machines. Eniac is utilizing other humans as allies. I mean, with like the women in the Russian women that Eniac manipulated. Eniac never mind controlled them. He manipulated them through persuasion and propaganda, which is really no different than what we humans do when we manipulate each other, really, when you think about it. So Eniac really he's just like the rest of us. He just happens to be a computer and really, really smart. And I don't think Eniac's goal is the destruction of the human race. I might be wrong, but I don't see why he would want to do that, because then he would just be one computer governing an empty world. There has to be more to his plan here than just destruction. There has to be.
Yeah, I mean, we have absolutely no clue. So I do think that little interlude we have when, so the Caucasian super spy is Olivia Fletcher. And when she almost drowns when the car goes off the bridge, we get that little flashback where we see her mother, and her mother has some sort of microchip, and she's asking how to make a finite mind infinite, and her daughter doesn't want to, and I'm assuming that daughter is Olivia Fletcher, doesn't want to have anything to do with it. She's like, well, I'm just going to listen to my music. So I do think that this woman, this Rosa Jules that's in Sweden, I do think it's Fletcher's mother.
Right.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I mixed them up there. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, I had them mixed up in my mind too. For some reason, I thought Allison Falk was the Caucasian, but Allison Falk is the African-American one. So yeah, but you're right. We got 58 hours left, I guess. 58 hours, 45 minutes, 44 seconds as this issue comes to a close. And I don't know, I guess we'll see what happens going forward. But you're right. It is a big question. What is Eniac's goal? What is its end goal? And I think that I really do think I'm onto something when I say that this countdown to me is a red herring, and it was Eniac's way of kind of, okay, let me find the people that can stop me. Where's Andronikov? Where's Rosa Jewels. Let me put out this fake countdown, and that'll spur everybody into action. I'll just follow them along. They'll lead me right to the people, the only people that are capable of stopping me. I really do. I mean, that's a small twist, but I could see Matt Kinton doing that for sure. And there is a B-side here, of course. It's by, let me get to the credits here. It's written by Matt Kent. We have Dave Lapham as artist, and it seems to tie into the hero trade, which I still haven't seen in person or been able to get my hands on or even read. My shop did get one, but they threw it away because they thought it was just garbage. So that's kind of sucking. I think they're going for like $1,400 at this point. But
oh wow,
yeah, I thought this was really interesting. I like this whole idea of this hero trade world that they're building. And I know they've said they're not going to do collections or what have you, but I do hope that we get at some point, like you can collect these like 3 or 4 parts of the hero trade into like a regular issue and just send them to comic shops. Because there's a lot going on here. Basically a guy, he's buried alive. It's called The Bloody Mess. He's buried alive next to his kids, which is just horrible. His kids are dead. And it's in a Greenleaf oil field. So to kind of tie it into a Tide Universe, Greenleaf Oil, of course, being the oil company from tankers. So this guy heads back home. He's all jacked up. His house is a mess. He climbs inside or tries to crawl inside, passes out, wakes up in the hospital the next day. There's a couple of douchebag cops talking to him, basically not believing anything he's saying. Wait, so you woke up in a shallow grave? You know, we think you killed your wife. And he's like, what are you talking about? I woke up in a shallow grave next to my kids who, you know, are dead. I've been in a coma for 3 weeks. I just woke up. You want to know where I was? I was in this grave that night. Oh, you know, somebody attacked me in our house. I blacked out. Oh, do you black out often? Just, you know, like I said, douchebag cops. His wife is missing. Nobody knows where she is. And even this guy, he's like, I have no idea. What do you mean she's not here? He doesn't even know that she was missing. You know, so bad enough he's lost his kids. And he finally gets out of the hospital. He goes back to his house. It's been condemned. And he's just kind of there. I mean, this guy's lost everything. He's lost his wife. He's lost his kids. And so as he's hanging out in this mess of a home that he still has, somebody rings the doorbell, and it's this guy wearing a strange looking like goggles and mask. Said, sorry to bother you. It turns out your wife had a $12 million insurance policy. Now, that's not going to help this guy out in terms of the cops. The cops are going to go, oh, your wife had a $12 million insurance policy. Now we know you killed her. Now that's a motive for the cops. But the guy says, well, there's just, you sign this and an NDA and you get the money, and there's just some things that I need to collect. And he walks out back to a shed, and the guy's like, wait, what things? And the guy goes in the shed basically and opens up this secret door behind a wall with a bunch of tools attached to it. And there's this costume there. It turns out all along, this guy's wife, Mrs. Salido, Marta Salido, was a superhero. And her costume is there with all the accoutrements and whatnot. And the guy's telling her that she died a hero. That's why she's missing. She was out fighting somewhere. I don't know why she wasn't fighting in her costume, but it does make a lot more sense why the house is all wrecked, right? Like maybe she got attacked at home. Maybe some supervillains found out her secret identity, kidnapped her husband and kids, and were holding them to make her do something that she didn't want to do. So maybe that's why she went out without her costume. We just don't know. But what I'll say about this story, in only 8 pages, Kent and Lapham establish a really interesting narrative that I desperately want to know more about. There's more intrigue and mystery here than there is in Eniac in a way. And I think that is established by this point of view character we have of Mr. Salido. I don't know if they give him a first name, but of him waking up, you know, as a father, him waking up next to his 2 sons, Josh and Carl, they're dead in the ground next to him. I mean, oh my God. You know, I can only imagine how terrible that is. He clearly cares about his wife, despite what the douchebag cops think. It's clear that this guy is distraught. So and even when he goes back to his house, I forgot to mention, the cops are outside watching. Those two cops are outside watching him. Like, this guy's like suffering, and these cops just want to pin these murders on him. It's really terrible. But I think that's what draws you in is your POV character, the tragedy that he's been through, the emotion he shows, the loss, the trauma, and the fact that he didn't even know that his wife was a superhero. So I don't know. This is so far is my favorite of the backups that we've had, of the 3 issues of Bad Idea so far, between Eniac 1, Tankers 1, and Eniac 2. This has been my favorite backup. So I thought it was outstanding.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's nice to see. It sort of turns the trope on its head. This would have been an extremely boring backup if it was told from the perspective of his wife, who was the superhero, because we would have known then that the wife has a secret identity. She hasn't told her husband her secret, et cetera, et cetera. It would have completely changed the perspective of the story. But, it's really great to come into this story, and we're just as baffled and as lost as the protagonists, waking up, what happened, our kids are dead, and all of a sudden you find out that your wife is a superhero, $12 million insurance policy, government agents showing up, insurance agents, what's going on? Have strange dreams, destroyed house. I mean, this really has all the hallmarks. If a movie started off like this would be fantastic. It would capture you immediately, capture your attention. You're standing up. It's like, oh my God, what's going on? This would actually, it's a great premise. It's a great way to start off a story.
Yeah, I agree. It's excellent. And it's David Lapham art. The guy's a legend at this point. Doing it in black and white and having David Lapham art definitely gives it an independent feel. And because of that, I feel like that does add to the intimacy of the story. Even though this is potentially a big story in scope, they managed to keep it kind of small. You're not asking the questions of, well, is this world inhabited with all kinds of superheroes, or you're not worried about that. You feel for this guy, and you want to know why his wife kept a secret from him and how she died, and what's going to happen with this insurance policy and these douchey cops and whatnot. So yeah, really, really great backup, really great B-side. So all right, well, I think that does it for this episode. We'll go ahead and shut it down, and I'll purge all my systems from the Bad Idea Takeover, and we'll be back with our regularly scheduled programming. But I'm sure Bad Idea, once again, will take us over next Sunday, because there's a Tankers 1 book that we're going to try to talk about. So that'll be for next Sunday's episode. So anything else you want to add, Rock?
No, just it's impressive. This Bad Idea publishing company has come up with some pretty good ideas.
Yeah. The stories are top notch for sure, which isn't a big surprise considering the level of talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the books continue to be hot on the spec market, which, whether you like it or not, whether you think they're manipulating the market or not, I personally don't. You can go and watch our episode with Dinesh and Warren. It kind of is what it is. It is a limited product. There are a limited number of stores. That's not to say they're gatekeeping, because any store can join. You just have to be willing to sign up and follow the rules. We've talked about those extensively, so I'm not going to go over them once again. But all these rules are in place to drive foot traffic into comic shops and to help local comic shops. So to me, that is a good thing. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We want to thank you for joining us as always, and we will talk to you next time.